and welcome to our presentation on The Scenes, an application designed to help upcyclers visualize their designs into reality. We will run through what exactly is the design problem we resolved using the Scenes, the highlights of our design journey, the features that make our app unique, and our process for evaluation. Lastly, we will reflect on the journey as a whole. So, let us first begin with formulating the problem and what was the base inspiration for designing our application. As youths, we are greatly concerned by the rise of fast fashion and the unsustainable search for wasted textiles, of over 450 billion away, with only 1% recycled worldwide. Locally, 137,000 tons of textile and leather waste was thrown away, out of which only 4% recycled. Now, so what is the solution to these problems as a consumer? We practice the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. So, what is upcycling then? It is creative reuse, or transforming unwanted products into new material of greater quality and value. So, how do people perform upcycling? Recently, there has been a movement of hobbyists getting into sewing to repurpose old clothes and refashion them into new products. This process is complex and time-consuming, involving designing, measuring, and then executing the sewing project. Our team felt that there were ways to facilitate this trend to assist hobbyists in their upcycling projects.
Now, let us take a look at our design journey. We first formulated the problem statement and identified our target users, narrowing down our focus. Then, we conducted contextual inquiries and went through extensive discussions to identify key user tasks to design for. We broke down these user tasks into storyboards and scenarios that encompass the design vision that we laid out, creating increasingly detailed prototypes as our focus narrowed down, alongside regular consultations with target users into a final application. Lastly, we reviewed completed application with target users and performed heuristic analysis. Now, let us run through some of the key milestones our team accomplished. Our first milestone is to identify target users. We set on targeting young adult hobbyist upcyclists who will be familiar with technology, but may face challenges in visualization and execution of upcycling projects. With this focus, we set out to do a contextual inquiry on these target users. One interesting insight we found was that users were primarily inspired by what clothes they had on hand to determine what projects to do. Design-wise, users did indeed face visualization problems and needed to use paper tracings to plan out their steps. From these designs, users had mismatched expectations of the final product, given that online tutorials do not use the same fabric and the process can be confusing. We developed 2 personas: Amy, who is an avid sewist facing issues in the design process, who really wants to sew but doesn't have much inspiration to come up with designs, and Olivia as our secondary persona who is relatively new to the world of sewing but has no issues with inspiration or coming up with projects. All of this fed into our key user tasks: the visualization of possible upcycling projects with what clothes they have, visualizing the measurements of the design product, and lastly, visualizing the execution of sewing through breaking it down into clear steps with tracings.
After formulating the problem, our focus moved towards designing a core set of features, as well as an interface that users would find intuitive. Our design goal was to enhance the experience of visualization and interactivity to see the possibilities users could pursue given their material. We came up with a scenario for our persona Amy to input genes into her system, create a 2-scale avatar, and fit the possible product, a tote bag, on her avatar. Our low-fidelity wireframe depicts this, with new fabrics being input and showing the tote bag on Amy's avatar. Next, we address the mismatch between the expectation and reality of the final product, using the 2-scale avatar to customize the fit of the product and visualize with an augmented reality selfie mode. In our low-fidelity wireframe, we incorporated an alert to ensure that users have enough fabric when scaling their different tote bag components. We also included an AR selfie mode as was initially proposed in our discussion. In team review, due to overlaps with the user task with the avatar, the AR selfie mode was removed. Lastly, on execution, we wanted to address this fragmentation of information sources of sewing, to allow users to enjoy the process of sewing rather than feeling frustration in figuring out the steps on the fly. We also felt a voice interface for navigating and seeking advice would be useful, since sewing is a hands-on activity. So we compiled these into a storyboard here, which had all three elements in a cute comic. Moving towards a low-fidelity wireframe, we provided tracing outlines for users to cut and seam rip, along with a voice chatbot. Users felt that the tracings were useful. However, they felt that it was better organized into sequential steps rather than as a whole. In our high-fidelity prototype, we made the changes and added both visual and verbal instructions with voice narration as well. All these insights were incorporated into our compile and group prototype.
Now, let's take a look at the seams and how user evaluations shaped our final product. On the meta level, we chose a triadic palette to provide our interface good color variety, with purple as our main color signifying creativity. We also selected the sans serif font Open Sans as it is clear and mobile resolutions with a clean typeface. These ensured a cohesive and consistent design throughout the application, applying Nielsen's fourth usability principle. Our user task 1 is shown above, where we provide more detail on how avatars are created, materials are added to the fabric bank, and how projects are suggested. In measurements, we made the product and avatar the central focus, displaying the relevant measurements for each component selected. Lastly, in execution, we onboard new users into the Sew Auntie interface, where Auntie will narrate and guide the user through a voice interface, where they can also ask the Auntie for help. Affordance is also given for conventional mobile navigation. Now, with our design prototype, we ran evaluations from a user-centric usability testing to see how our user flows worked in reality. Our participants were 3 novice to intermediate upcyclists, where we had 3 members facilitating the test conducted on Zoom. We had the objective of having 2/3 of tasks completed without error and full completion of tasks. From this, we found areas to improve. There was awkward navigation between different phases from using the top bar, hence we added a next button to provide an intuitive navigation. New users were confounded when first presented with the interface, hence we added more detailed onboarding. Fabric amounts representation was made more visual to conform to user mental models. Ask for Help button was also found to be non-indicative of its full function and was reworked into a chat button.
Throughout the course of this project, we faced challenges that we had to overcome as a team. Particularly, some of the challenges faced came from the sewing task itself, as we did not have relevant sewing experience ourselves. Furthermore, the sourcing of our target audience, as well as managing our busy schedules, also compounded with these challenges. Due to the team's lack of contextual information, we relied heavily on the apprentice master model to refine our focus and tailor the user experience. We also sourced around our social networks and social media to find target users, as not many of us personally knew upcycling hobbyists. We scheduled a weekly timing to keep free from meetings, prioritizing tasks involving everyone, as well as planning an agenda to keep on track. Next was the challenge in both the design process itself. We all had different ideas in feature set and style. Additionally, real-life usability testing was unfeasible due to circumstances on the ground. Everyone had great but diverging design visions. Aligning our features was a challenge that we had to use heuristic analysis and deep discussion to overcome. Our unified style guide required a cohesive design, and as such we elected a design lead to guide the overall design and correct errors. In evaluation, we were unable to test workflows due to COVID restrictions, therefore compromising by focusing on user flows within the application. Overall, we felt given more time, we would certainly add more features through expanding the voice interactions with Sew Auntie and testing the application on more complex projects. From being curious apprentices of the design task to tailoring a user experience, we have learned the importance of human-centric design through collaboration with our target users as well as within a team over multiple iterations and steps. We have come to appreciate how interface design goes hand in hand with technology and functionality to drive impact, and have thoroughly enjoyed learning from you. Thank you, Prof. Zhao, our teaching assistant Lauren, and the 3240 teaching team for this wonderful opportunity for learning and growth.